Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Manon Bolliger, a retired and deregistered naturopathic physician with 30 plus years of experience. Here you will discover engaging and informative conversations between experienced healers, covering all aspects of healing, the personal journey, the journey of the practitioner, and the amazing possibilities for our own body and spirit.
So welcome to the Healers Café. And today I have with me Dr. Teeya Scholten, and she has worked in the field of education and mental health for over 40 years. She has authored numerous books on a positive, balanced, integrative approach to attention, learning discrepancies, depression, child management, and trauma. And she has also had the opportunity to create and train others in innovative methods of achieving wellness, such as Empowerment Plus, a positive, balanced, and integrated approach to ADHD, which I'd love to find out more about, as well as empowermentplus.org, which, I think the program's called Finding Joy, Trauma Treatment Technique. Anyway, so I really am excited to speak with you today, and I welcome you.
Thank you, Manon, and I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So one question, it's 40 years later. You've been doing this, quite a long time here.
Yes.
And I have a lot of viewers that are wondering what to study, where to start, if it's really right for them, if they need special gifts, if they have to have, whatever, a sign from the universe, something. Yes. So what started you down this path?
Yes. Well, I mean, I wanted to be a nurse initially, but I couldn't look at the picture, the grade 7 picture in our grade 7 health textbook of a needle going into someone's arm.
It started with that, huh?
I thought, this is probably not the right direction. And then I was so honored to have one of my just such precious mentors who actually suggested to me that I consider the applied psychology program at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. And I took his advice and have really never looked back. Because the applied psychology covered clinical as well as the educational, that type of thing. So that's kind of on one level of an explanation as to how I got that training.
Right.
And at that point, actually, when I was doing I took my master's there, and then I went back 7 years later for my doctorate. And I really wanted to study the effects of food sensitivities on learning. And this was way back now in 87. Okay? Yeah. The world wasn't ready for that then.
No, definitely not. I think it still is actually, it's still, I think, maximum 11 hours of nutrition for most doctors, right?
Is it 11 hours now, Manon? 11 hours?
Oh, yeah. Maybe it was less before one.
Oh, it was. Andrew Weil, Dr. Andrew Weil from Arizona, the Integrative Health Program, in the foreword to a book that he just wrote, he said when he was studying in the middle 60s, it was half an hour.
Okay.
30 minutes. So it's really improved to 11 hours, but really, what can you cover in 11 hours even?
No, exactly. Yeah, no. So,
yes.
Well, good. So you were quite the pioneer at the time.
Well, anyway, fortunately, I listened to the wisdom of Dr. David Randall, this wonderful, wonderful mentor, who was also super interested in primary prevention, because that's another thing I was very, very interested in. And so anyway, I took the course, and he said, Teeya, it's so controversial. It's so, why do it now? Why don't you wait till you have your doctorate, and then you can involve this in the work that you do? So that's exactly what happened. It was after my doctorate. It was about 13 years later when I was working for an agency, and it was a training agency, and people were starting to send their children to me, to refer to me specifically instead of just the agency. And I just found morally, I could no longer keep this knowledge to myself, the knowledge of food sensitivities and how it had affected me. I morally couldn't keep it to myself. It was almost as though God was tapping me on the shoulder saying, out you go. And so within 3 clients in private practice, the circle emerged where I started to look at and formulate the way I thought about clients in terms of attention, learning, personality, food sensitivities, and other factors like spinal alignment and trauma and that type of thing. So that's kind of how I ended up creating these things. But there is a little bit of a backstory behind that, which I mentioned to you in some of our first communications. And that was me being an 8-year-old who was suicidal. With, like, as far as I could see, no reason to be suicidal.
Right.
You know, I had friends, I had a great parents, I had a great family life, I had a faith life. Why was I, like, it didn't make any sense. I thought, am I spoiled? Like, what's going on? And I actively chose not to kill myself at that point because I knew my parents would be very upset because they were such good parents.
Wow.
You know, and then at age 23, the circumstances were perfect where I was married. I had a 2-year-old. My husband knew I was like this before he married me. He would be a great dad. So I did at that point think, oh, this is it. Because I'd been praying and praying and praying for, please help me. So this is age 8 to 23 now. That's a long time to feel suicidal.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I didn't know what was the matter with me. The closest I got to it was something called a masked depression, where you would have been talking to me and I could have talked like this, but deep down inside, I wanted it to be over. It had to be over. And it turned out that God was trying to answer my prayers all that time I was praying, but I wasn't listening. Because my neighbor ended up, she had been telling me that my son was allergic. Because in those days, now you remember those days, Manon, I know you do, Adele Davis, you know, let's eat right to keep fit, you know, and oh yes, have a child and give them this pep up, which was with dairy and it was with yeast. And anyway, long story short, I did listen to my neighbor after a failed suicide attempt. Well, actually, I was put in the hospital and I had to see a psychiatrist after they pumped my stomach. And I said to the psychiatrist, I'm happy to see you, but I don't know what problem I have. I think it's just something biochemical. And in those days, sorry, say that again.
That's exactly what they believed, right? So now we need more chemicals.
Right, but fortunately, this gentleman, this psychiatrist, Dr. Curtin, he listened to me. And in those days, it was the orthomolecular time of Dr. Abraham Hoffer, you know, and megavitamins and la la la. He said, well, okay. He probably interviewed me and discovered, I mean, I'm probably neurotic, but I wasn't psychotic. Do you know what I mean? I shouldn't joke about that, but anyway, he recommended niacin, megadoses of niacin at that point. And that actually did help until I finally discovered when I took my son to the allergist, listened to my neighbor, and the allergist did some skin testing at that point. That was 1976. It's a long time ago. Anyway, he said to me, you know, with food sensitivities, you can't really tell with the tests that we have now because the food goes through all these different changes in the body. He said the only way you can really find is to take find it out is to take milk out of his diet for a week, put it back in, do the same thing with wheat. And he said, and I want you to do the same thing. Now, I hadn't complained about anything, but he probably saw my allergic shiners.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And my son Jeff, despite us treating him with great nutrition, that poor kid didn't have a cookie till he was 2, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. He was getting bronchitis, he was getting ear infections, and why? Well, we did this testing, Manon, only a week, take it out for a week, put it back in, and our lives have never been the same since. Because Jeff didn't get sick again. He was only 2 or 3 at that point, and he didn't get sick again until he was probably 10 or 11. That's a long time for a kid not to get sick.
Well, it's actually normal if we actually look at what are the triggers. It's the other way around.
Yeah, that's a thank you for the reframe on that. If the person is taking care of themselves properly, we ought to be thriving.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Jeff never got sick again, probably started to like have ice cream cones or trade cheese, whatever, rice crackers for cheese sandwiches. But and my depression vanished. Yeah. Because
so was it both the dairy and the wheat in both your cases, or
there was for my son it was primarily dairy. And for me, it was primarily wheat at that point. But I also discovered that milk was causing me to have like a kind of a subclinical sore throat all the time.
Right.
And I also discovered that when I stopped drinking milk, I stopped crying. So I've been crying like every 4 days, not like clockwork, but regularly. But about little things here and there. But the really deep black dogs of depression, suicidal ideation, boom, gone overnight, never to return. And so that's where I really think many of us are wounded healers.
Absolutely.
That's a primary motivation for me, Manon, when I see people suffering when they don't need to be suffering, or looking for answers and they can't find answers.
Well, when did it become even talked about that the gut is responsible for 70% of the neurotransmitters?
Oh, I know. Isn't that
amazing?
That wasn't not too long ago. I'm about to become 74. So, it seems, but it wasn't that long ago, but it was probably 13 years ago or so.
Yeah, which isn't really that long ago, when you think about it, right? Because now with that understanding, it's almost criminal if you don't look at the gut, it's
criminal. Yes.
But then, the idea that maybe you play around with the brain as if it's all up there, it's more normal, I'm not saying it's right, but it's definitely more understandable at that time period, so.
Well, and when you say criminal, I don't easily use those words, but they do resonate, because now with what we know,
exactly,
there's no excuse. I once said to a GP, do you people not I'm not that tactful, so do you people not realize there's a connection between milk products and asthma? And she said, oh yeah, we know about it. We just don't like to be the bearers of bad news. And I thought, people, you willing to write prescriptions, put children on all sorts of things, when maybe just taking the child off milk products. I don't want to oversimplify things, but I think that's where the Empowerment Plus method comes in, is in terms of a big, hairy goal, I really want to be number one in terms of a method that people can look at when they're wondering, like if Mrs. Brown is told by a teacher and the teacher can't really say ADD or ADHD, but your child has attention issues, you should look into it. What does the parent do? You know, if they don't really want to do the medication route, do they go to a naturopath? Do they spend $5,000 or $6,000 on a psychoeducational assessment that basically, if it's well done, tells them what they already knew about their child?
Exactly.
I'm a little jaded in this area.
You're allowed to be.
But what I really want for people is to go to the website. It's there. It's free. It's available to you. Go and have a look at the 15-minute video and see if this approach makes sense.
So can you share a little bit of this? I know you have all these,
Sure.
What are they called? Infographics.
Yeah.
Maybe to sort of share a little bit your methodology and what might facilitate this understanding of what people can do. You can start with ADHD because I think that's the.
Let me see where I can go here. I think what I'll do is just go to the website first, if I can get there. I don't think.
But you could leave the website there, but I was thinking more like to talk about these things like the inverted, stress bucket and the inverted V curve, which you told me about, and like more to really understand how you're looking at this and how people can start with that,
Great.
And put your website for.
Oh, sure. Because if you go to the website, which I'm sure you will put in your links, what people will see on that website, the Empowerment Plus website, on the home page, they'll see a link to a 15-minute DVD that describes the Empowerment Plus method, that describes you have to take certain food out of your diet for a week. If you don't want to do it, we don't want to see you. Do you know what I mean? Pretty important. So yes, people can have a look at that later, but let's get to the bottom of this right now with this overarching concept of stress bucket, which everybody can relate to. And I won't spend a long time, I'll just go over it fairly quickly, but I think it fits with these various models. We can see where they fit. Even Bowen therapy, we can see where Bowen therapy would fit with this as well. But if we think of ourselves as stress buckets, then, we can, there's good stress, bad stress, but it's stress and it all adds up into our stress bucket. And, maybe we have a job we don't really like. Maybe our neighbor's a bit irritating. Maybe we're dealing with teenagers. Maybe we have a cat allergy. Do you know what I mean? It all adds up. And then somebody cuts us off in traffic and boom, our stress bucket overflows. That's it. Seems minor, but we lose it. Mm-hmm. And some people get angry, some cry, some get itchy. And most of us know how we react. Do you know what I mean? When our stress bucket is overflowing. So what we have, and I would love for people to think about this because everyone can relate to it. We have a choice here. We can take stressors out of our stress bucket. Like, don't let the cat in the bedroom anymore. Do you know what I mean? Or remove a couple of inflammatory foods from your diet, like take out milk products.
I think you're talking about common sense. I think that's missing.
So we wish it were. Listen, there's still so much incorrect. Look at Canada's food rules. I'm sorry. They were created by the Milk Marketing Board back in 1920. I mean, people are being given wrong information. Yes. And that's where you and I are talking about criminal. And it is just about criminal, because what we need to do is start to look at inflammatory foods. But, the lay person, what's inflammatory? But if you just say, listen, there's a chance if your child is getting a cold 5 times a year, that kid is maybe sensitive to milk products. Take it out for a week and put it back in and just see the difference. Anyway, so you have an opportunity to take out a stressor here. And this is also where the trauma treatment fits in, because a lot of people don't even think that they can, that resolving the distress associated with past, present, or even future concerns can lower their stress bucket.
Yeah.
They don't even think about it. Oh, I never think about it. It doesn't bother me. Well, but when you do think about it, does it bother you? Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't go there. Do you know what I mean? Well, in that case, let's offload it. Let's resolve it. So the other part is the stress bucket. We can also increase the size of our stress bucket. And this is where there's a lot of information right now from people in terms of mindfulness practices, prayer, meditation, exercise, massage, B vitamins, having fun. That goes into the common sense intervention. So anyway, where I want to be is I want to be, and I want my clients, I want all of us, we're part of the human race. Why can't we live here at just an optimal level?
Manon Bolliger here, and I want to thank you for taking actionable steps towards engaging your healing journey and helping others discover their path by watching, sharing, subscribing, and reviewing these podcasts. Every review and share helps spread the word, these different perspectives and choices and options for healing. And to thank you, I'd like to invite you to sign up to my free 7-sequence email tips on health and healing for everyday life. You can go to healerscafe.com tips. Thanks so much.
So when someone cuts us off in traffic, we don't lose it. We can just send them positive energy that they can get on their way. So that's the stress bucket. Any comments on that one before we leave?
Nope, I think that's really clear. I mean, those are the options, right? And the end result is that if you can manage in a genuine way, your stress, your emotions, then you also stop judging other people. So they cut you off. Okay, maybe they had a bad day, whatever, it's like,
Yes.
Let's not make it more than it is.
Well, exactly.
And we take responsibility for of how the stress hits us, right?
And there's so much more to that. I was given a name Willow Heart Woman when I took a shamanic course a while ago. And I just loved it because because the key ingredient in aspirin comes from the willow tree.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of what I've done over the years is just let's just relieve pain. Let's just, it's not deep kind of transformational stuff, because what you're talking about is an attitude, which is so important for people. So let's see now, Manon, we have a little bit of time left. Maybe I'll tell you about do you want me to quickly tell you about
let's do both. Yeah, we'll go through it fast. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's still time. The thing about ADD, and I have all these things, like all the things I'm talking about, I've had personal experience. And it was really fun when I did see clients for them to watch how I managed myself and my channel surfing brain and all of that kind of thing. But one of the things I discovered in my 25 years or more of practice is something that has never really officially been announced to the world. So I'll just take you briefly through the explanation. In 1908, two psychologists, Yerkes and Dodds, discovered the inverted U relationship between stress and performance. And people recognize this in themselves. We need a little bit of challenge in order to get activated. Then we're at our top level. This shows the top level here of performance. And then if we have too much stress, our performance deteriorates. And so that gives us a range of optimal performance here. And again, this fits beautifully with the stress bucket, because if you're overstressed, well, guess what? Take some stressors out.
Right.
And get back here to your optimal level. But I actually don't think it's true with those of us that have ADD. I think we actually have an inverted V curve. And someday, I don't know where to write about it, but it has to get out there. I want people that are dealing with people with attention issues or that have attention issues themselves to realize, when you experience inconsistency, how come I can do it today and I couldn't do it yesterday, or I can't do it tomorrow? It's super frustrating for those of us who experience this inconsistency. But when they realize, and when I diagnosed people with ADD and then explained how their brain works, their channel surfing brain, the inverted V, it's so empowering to them, and all. So empowering, because they realize, oh, this is where interest plays a role in activating me. Yeah, if I'm doing stuff I'm interested, man, do I have energy for that? You know?
Yeah.
But I have to get motivated in order to do it, and last minute motivates people with ADD.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But if we're overstressed, then we totally plummet. We just can become paralyzed so easily. But the solution is clicking off some stressors,
Right.
and taking some time to meditate and getting some rest or whatever. So that's my inverted V, announced to the world for the first time ever.
But this is when you're looking at that, and we'll get to the other one. But
Okay.
so it's going down like very quickly, so that the window of optimal activity,
yes,
is much smaller. But am I correct in understanding that a person who has ADD can still, by working on the stressors, extend that window? Like,
no, they don't extend the window. What they do
what
is
happens?
get to their optimal level of performance. We all know how we feel when we are on. Do you know what I mean? When we're doing well. So it doesn't extend their window, it gets them there. So let me give an example. The other day, I was feeling kind of upset about something that was happening. And I thought, well, I'm not willing to be upset, but I was irritable. And I'm usually a pretty nice person, but I was irritable. I was short with my husband, and he's going, well, I'm not willing to, what's going on? Like, woo! And so I took half an hour and I did the trauma treatment technique on myself. And we made a couple of changes in our routine downstairs, because it drives him insane when I'm on my phone dictating.
Right.
So, and he's getting older. And if I don't talk to him, like if I'm not 3 feet, if I'm not close to him, then I have to raise my voice. Well, that's not pleasant. So just making those couple of adjustments, Manon, doing the trauma treatment, and which took half an hour, and making a decision to keep our main level technology free again. And I think he gave me a massage before I went to bed. The very next day, I was back up here.
I see. Okay.
So it only takes a couple of, that's the beauty of it, is it only takes a couple of interventions to get us back up, if that's where we're normally living.
Right. Okay. Now I understand how you're framing it better. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Great.
You're welcome. So then we will go to our other beautiful infographic created by Dennis Powell, our in-house design person. And here we are. This is the FGTT process. This is our trauma treatment process that we are now training master's level clinicians in how to take their clients through this. And many of us, well, there's 10 of us now that have been trained in it. And many of us have taken a lot of different forms of trauma treatment. And we love this approach, because it's easy. Not only is it easy on the client, it's easy on the therapist. And it's the three of our uniques are safe and secure. It's safe and secure. It's quick and easy, and it's tried and true. So just like you worked on your particular technique for Bowen therapy over the years, refining it, I've been working on this for 15 years now. and using feedback from people. And we've now got this protocol. It's a manualized protocol. It's written up in this book. This is the training manual that we use to train practitioners. But what would you like to know about this process?
Well, I was just looking, so there's like a pre-test and then a post-test. So is this something that the so practitioners learn to do this test, but so that the client can then gauge themselves to see if what they're incorporating in their own treatment plan is helping them, and that's sort of the gauge of this? Or
oh, that's a really, really good guess, but it's way more complicated than it really is. So all it is, for those people that are listening that have done EMDR or the accelerated resolution technique, any of those EMDR derived therapies. Okay. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That was discovered in 1990 by Dr. Francine Shapiro. The SUD score is something she used that was developed years before. It stands for subjective units of distress.
Oh, right. I now remember. I'm terrible with acronyms, but yes, okay, now this makes sense.
That's what it, and maybe in the next version of the infographic, we'll put it underneath there. But all you do with this particular technique, I mean, you prepare the person, and all we ask people for 2 sessions, actually. 2 sessions, because we need to start off with a target. So that could be any distress related to past, present, or future, but the target has to be less than 5 out of 10 disturbing.
Right, okay.
That's the SUD score. And so what we do is, let's say we targeted you with your knee. I'm going to pick on you with your knee.
Sure.
So when you think of the olden days, before you discovered what you needed to do to fix it, when you think, I don't know if you have still any memories about your knee and how uncomfortable that was for you. It was uncomfortable for a long time.
Yeah, so I think because it was completely in my subconscious, right? The only thing I had was that they were sensitive to touch, but not painful, right? So it was more like, what's that about? But not really deep, right? So
no,
it was,
what I mean is now. I mean, now when you look back on your journey and you think that you suffered for quite a few years with your knee being sensitive to your touch, maybe it's a bad example. I don't know.
No, that's fine. That's
I'll take my own example. So a number of years ago, someone had given me some lovely, lovely socks for Christmas. And I was running down the stairs or going downstairs, typically faster, and my foot went out from under me.
Right.
And at that moment, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm home alone. What's going to happen? Like, if I fall and break my neck, or if I, like, what am I going to, you know what it's like in that moment. You just don't know what's going to happen. As it turned out, I only sprained something. It wasn't a big deal. But what I found was, even 3 weeks after the incident, my mind was flashing back to that moment when my foot went out.
To the traumatic injury, yes. Yeah.
Because it was not hardly an injury, but it was that moment of panic. It was still in my system. And not wanting to suffer, I decided, I better do this FJ Triple T on it. Because to me, if you're getting flashbacks for something, it means your mind is really trying to resolve it. Don't you agree?
Yes. And this is a better example, because I think, mine was not, it had become chronic, and there was one incident. So it doesn't provoke quite the same pathways. Yeah.
The difficulty with this example is it's so minor compared to what a lot of people have dealt with PTSD kind of trauma. We treated the Lost Boys of South Sudan with having been a child soldier. We treated women who've witnessed their dad beating up their mom for, so this can deal with anything. This example is very minor compared to that, but it's a good example. So the freeze frame, so I would choose the fall as my target. The freeze frame was that moment my foot went out from the stairs. And it was probably upsetting after the fact, about a 3.5 out of 10. If 0 is no disturbance and 10 is the most you can imagine. That's all it is. Boom. How disturbing is it? So it's about a 15-second test. So then with our clients, we do a body scan and we start to get into the body. And here, these are the unique pieces of the FJTT. This healing is so deep, Manon, so deep on so many levels. And we're using the wisdom of the koshas, which is a 3,000-year-old yogic piece of information. But we start with just an awareness of the body, getting in touch with your body, getting in touch with your breath, a few breaths, and then we jump into the technique. And in this case, we would say, well, thinking of the freeze frame now, but going out, what's the negative thought, word, or emotion associated with that? So for me, it was clumsy. The word that came up was clumsy. And in this case, you're not figuring it out here at this level. Yeah. You're figuring it out at a deeper within the body level where you trust what comes up. So clumsy came up. Then where did I feel it in my body? It can be anywhere. Let's say I felt it in my chest. So then you feel clumsy in your chest and allow a symbol, image, or physical sensation to emerge that represents clumsy. So I don't know, is this interesting for you? Should I?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, what came up as I concentrated on feeling clumsy in my heart center, what came up was a symbol of tumbleweed, which I thought was so funny because it was so perfect. Anyway, now we get to the unique part of the FJTT, because instead of doing bilateral stimulation, which is what a lot of other trauma treatment, hybrid from EMDR, what they do, we use bilocal stimulation, internal bilocal stimulation. So I would go from the tumbleweed, picturing the tumbleweed, to my place of awareness at the top of my forehead. So I'm just visualizing tumbleweed, tapping into here, not tapping, but just checking into the top of my head, back to the tumbleweed. What happened is it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and turned into a pile of crumbs. And it stopped changing. So as soon as it stops changing, you're at the end of the channel. And so then you go to the next step here, and that is, well, what is the opposite thought, word, or emotion opposite to clumsy? So again, you're not thinking of it yourself. You just trust what comes up. What came up was graceful. The image was white, 6 white swans. And as I went back and forth to my place of awareness, the 6 white swans got bigger and bigger and bigger and became a whole screen of white feathers, just huge white feathers. And that's where it stayed. And now we get to what we often call, we don't talk to clients about these levels. We just know it as practitioners, what we're doing. But this is the final combination where we go quickly back and forth between the final on the positive side and the final on the negative side. So white feathers, pile of crumb, boom, 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 quickly back and forth, just for a few moments, quickly and comfortably, and then notice them at the same time and notice what happens. And you'll never guess, but the white feathers turned into a feather duster that dusted away the crumbs.
Yeah. Wow, yeah.
Isn't that something? And then the post test would have been 0 out of 10. It didn't bother me anymore, and it did not come back. So then the closing is just something that we we just
like, is it like a grounding or
yes. Done this work, you're here, come back now, wiggle your hands and feet. So that is the process. And I know you love gentle and non-invasive. And here people don't have to retell their stories. Some people want to tell a little story, like a little way I did, but they don't have to. And that's another thing about privacy if there's stuff they're embarrassed about, it's typically adolescent girls that have had some sexual trauma. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fine, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, any questions about that, Manon?
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I very much relate to this. And it's really nice. I mean, one of the things I relate to is the symbolism. In my program, listen, S is for symbols, symptoms are symbols. And it's very much using our capacity through symbolism to have our subconscious work out all the stuff, and then trusting this, what I would call the supraconscious, this inner knowing that we know, so it's it's very exciting. I love the way you've laid that out. So
thank you for the opportunity to explain it, because it has been such a blessing to be involved in this and to see those symbols, because people don't even have to understand it.
Exactly. It's like the mind matters away. Who cares? It's like there's something else that's happening. But we have run out of time.
I know we have.
But I think people will stay and enjoy those last 10 minutes, because that was extremely interesting. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you again for the opportunity, Manon. Look forward to connecting with you again.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Manon Bolliger. Continue your healing journey by visiting thehealerscafe.com and her website, and discover how to listen to your body and reboot for optimal health.